Alright, we are on the Warner Brothers backlot, and we're about to go on a ghost tour in conjunction with the press junket for The Curse of La Llorona, which we just saw here. Well, going on ghost tours is not usually the type of stuff that we have here, but should be fun. Hopefully, La Llorona, I'll tell you say her name right.
La Llorona.
La Llorona. I keep saying El. La Llorona. I keep saying El Llorona. My Sharona. And we're off.
We're off to the races.
So, my name's Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. Oh my God.
Whoa, getting off to a spooky start.
That's right. How we roll around here. All right, folks.
Literally.
Shazam! Welcome to Warner Brothers After Dark.
Oh.
Like I said, my name is Nicole. We acquired this lot back in 1928 from First National Pictures. So Warner Brothers did start off with four brothers: Harry, Albert, Sam, and Jack. Make sure we remember Jack Warner because we do see him quite frequently here at Warner Brothers. So this is New York City. The theater that you see on your left-hand side, this was the theater used in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Now Chicago, straight down the street, that is where we filmed Priest. It was a human meat market. Now back in 1952, there was a massive electrical fire, caught New York City completely engulfed in flames. So instead of Jack Warner immediately wanting to put it out, he said, let it burn. Because he wanted to film it first. You never know when you might need it for a movie. Very shortly after that fire, security guards have seen a man that's half dissolved walking around New York City, and they're thinking that it might have something to do with this fire. Keep in mind that all of the stories that you're going to hear tonight, these have been acquired through previous security guards, firemen, even some tour guides here, because we do linger on. We have 24-hour access here, so we see a lot of stuff going on. This building here on your right that has those green windows, during Horror Made here in 2016, we had two tour guides that were hanging out right over here just waiting for their next tour to go out. They look to their right on that third floor and they just see a man running from the left all the way to the right. They thought they were just, you know, it's just a minor glitch. They might have just seen something that wasn't really there. So they just giggled, they shrugged it off until they noticed at the very last window on the right above the bookstore that someone peeked their head out and looked right at them outside of the window. Now, I said that they were running from the left to the right, but folks, the only floor that exists in here is that first floor. There are no second or third floor. It's just completely empty. So, did they see it? I think they did.
Why is the door open?
Exactly. Now, this is Embassy Court, the courthouse that you see on your left-hand side. This was utilized in Omega Man. Omega Man. Yeah. Next portion here, this is our front lot. So initially we started off with 6 sound stages, and they were called super stages, so we split those in half. Now we have 31, excluding number 13 because Jack Warner was extremely superstitious. So,
oh, really?
yeah, so instead we kind of split some stages in half. We made them 27 and 27A and 28 and 28A.
I see somebody walking right here.
CGI, real, fake,
Jeez,
ghost, I don't know.
So real.
That's right. So we do have graveyard shifts here at Warner Brothers for our security guards. When they are patrolling around the lot, they are walking around the outside perimeters and they're walking through our fire lanes on the interiors outside of the interior. Now when security guards are roaming around, just making sure everything is going according to plan, there's no one sneaking in the lots. Each stage here is insulated with just a fancy word for insulation called insequil. So they can't hear what's going on outside when they're inside, and you can't hear what's going on inside when you're outside. So when they are walking those fire lanes and they hear someone running on the catwalk above them, but they didn't hear anyone enter in through the front door, then you can't suggest that it was something that was roaming around outside because they in fact cannot hear the outside at the time. Interesting.
Spooky.
Yeah. Gotta think there's a lot of history here.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything?
Have I personally? No, but see, I feel like I'm so friendly that maybe I'm just not, I'm not the one to be haunted by, that I just kind of get shrugged off. Now, a lot of my friends actually have, so anytime I say a tour guide, I know these tour guides personally.
Okay.
So these stories were in fact checked. Coming up on the left-hand side, that giant WB emblem that's attached to the tallest soundstage here at Warner Brothers, that is stage 16. There's a massive water tank under those floorboards, so from the bottom of the water tank to the top of the roof. This building reaches 98 feet tall. So on the interior of the perimeters, there are 2 levels of catwalks. When security guards are in there, they will also hear running on those catwalks. And when they look up to see if anyone had snuck inside, a can of Coke dropped down from the top and landed on the floor at the bottom. It wasn't just an empty can of Coke, it was a full can of Coke, but no one was seen at the top of that floor. So just mysteriously dropped.
I'd peace out.
Now on your right hand side, this is stage 8. So a security guard that is still an employee here at Warner Brothers, his name is Johnny. In his pastime, he hangs out with paranormal activity groups. But he was training a new security guard, and they walked into stage 8 to just kind of let him know the rundown of what to do when you're inside of the stage, how to turn off and on the lights, where to walk, where to watch out for. And then they hear a noise, and they both look at each other, and they asked one another, "Did you hear that?" And they were like, "Yeah." It was children's laughter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Joanna.
yeah, that's right. And children are not ones to be messed with, because normally if you see children's in those scary films, that it's in fact a demonic, it's a demon of some kind. It is not a real child. If you are an Annabelle fan like myself, then you know exactly what you're in store for.
But do you believe it is true or not for you?
Oh, it's absolutely true.
It is?
Yeah. Now, in addition to that, when they both heard those children's laughter, that security guard went back in to see if he could hear it again. He heard nothing. He couldn't get anything on recording until he said, "Do you all want to play tag?" And a little boy said yes.
No.
Yes. Now that security guard that was being trained, immediately after they heard the children's laughter, he went to the office, turned in his badge, and has never been on the lot since.
Wow.
Got freaked out. He's not about that paranormal life.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty good film, right, with Diana? So that opening sequence when they're in that factory with all of the mannequins, because we know Diana, it's basically, your modern day, Are You Afraid of the Dark story. So coming up on your left-hand side, this is the interior of that opening scene. So in that opening sequence, we have the character Paul, who hears a noise. And these lights are all motion censored, so as long as he stays in the light, he's fine. So he starts to see this dark, shadowy figure, which we find out her name is Diana. And as soon as these lights go off at the end, he gets scratched by Diana. So this is all where that opening sequence happened.
For lights out.
And this is also utilized in one of the scenes from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, you guys have a gas station.
This is a real gas station. It's ran on biodiesel fuel. This gas station was seen in the film Them, with the giant ants.
Yeah, you kidding.
That's it.
How does it close the gas? Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen someone so excited about that.
Them, are you out of your mind?
Oh my god! I thought you said they live. Like, that's what I was thinking, and I was like,
no, giant ants.
Oh.
Now, so I mentioned lights out. Now, the interior we just passed. The exterior of that factory is on your right-hand side. This is our transpo area, or our picture car vault. So they put a sign at the corner of our picture car vault here, and then that is where the opening sequence was. But we are actually going to get out, and I'm going to take you inside of our prop warehouse.
yes!
Get these things from estate sales. People have donated them, and we've acquired this lot back in 1928, so the amount of props that were simply just given to us from all of these other productions is insane. So once we go inside there, we're going to mention some props that used to be there, but have disappeared, and some other things that have happened
What?
since we have acquired the lot.
Children.
We don't allow people to donate stuff anymore for some of these reasons that you're going to hear.
For the same reasons.
Oh, people used to donate stuff?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so even, this isn't scary, but if a new Warner Brothers production, or any Warner Brothers production, like Pretty Little Liars or something like that, a television show, they built a lot of their things in the mill, or they bought their own stuff. Whenever their project is done, we get to keep it. So that's how we have been able to obtain nearly 500,000 props inside of here.
Well, they gave us a lantern. It's pretty bright.
There's something to do always.
They had lantern in the movie,
About doing that night shoots, 'cause
so
a lot of night shoots.
now we get a lantern for our home.
So we had security guards one year a while ago. They were watching all of the cameras in our prop warehouse, just making sure everything was, okay. Right, and so normally, our tour carts, they can reach a max of 14 people on a tour cart. So it's going to be less people. So a security guard is watching footage, watching tour guests go in and out, and he counts 13 people. And then towards the end of them about to leave the prop warehouse, he notices that this guy in a black shirt and navy hat just kind of walks off. And so the security guard rushes out of his office and rushes to try and find this guy in a black shirt and navy hat. And where this guy was going, there was no exit. And so he found the tour guide and was like, "You have 12 guests, but I counted 13 on your camera, or on the camera on my security footage." And so the security guard recounted and said, "No, sir, I've had 12 guests this whole time, not 13.
Right.
So, welcome to the prop house. So, so that's why I'm making sure I've got all of my. So this is a very old building. It's also a very large building. So you're going to notice that your footsteps, they creak. So your footsteps are very noticeable when you're walking through here. Now that doesn't give any reason why you would hear someone running up behind you and hearing these creaks in the footsteps. Now, we used to have a Howdy Doody doll right there in front of that white wall. And it was sitting in a chair facing away from the walkway just to not freak anyone out. Security guards came in, made sure that everything looked fine. They were like, "Oh, cool, the Howdy Doody doll is turned around." And then they came back to switch out their shifts, and the doll was turned and facing them. So they were like, "That's weird." Turned him back around, did their round, and came back, and he was once again facing towards the security guards. That doll is no longer there. So
Where's Howdy?
I don't know.
Oh God, please breathe.
So below us, those are where a lot of those fake dead bodies are, all those fake weapons, armors. And you're gonna notice that your feet, they keep creaking through here.
Yeah.
Now when people are going in to check out items, they hear creaks above their heads, running up and down the runway when nobody else is in here at the time. So there's a scene in one of our Conjuring films where the Crooked Man makes his first appearance. We had that grandpa in the rocking chair that was constantly in the rocking chair, and he turned into the Crooked Man.
Yeah.
That chair was in our basement. We had a tour guide pass that rocking chair and was like, "Oh, I recognize that. That was where the Crooked Man was." And then as soon as he left the basement floor and made his way up the stairs, a fire started in the basement, and that chair is no longer in use. It's been hours in here.
Not definitely.
By myself? Probably not. With other people? Maybe. Actually, I'd probably do this by myself. I'm really into this stuff.
Has that giant Care Bear ever come to life when you're walking through here?
Do you want it to?
No.
A little bit.
Not that I'm aware of, but a photographer was in here pulling for a shoot. So they were in here pulling some hand props, and they kept hearing footsteps, and they kept turning around, and there was nothing there. And then all of a sudden, he just got cold, and the hair on his arms just rose up. And he asked, "Who's there?" And then as soon as he said, "Who's there?" everything just got silent. He got back to normal temperature. His hair went back down on his arms. There was no longer any footsteps. It just all disappeared. So it's like the person did not want to be found. And when it was noticed that it was about to be outed, he just stopped altogether. Robert Greenfield, the head of our property department, he keeps all the lights on the second floor on Tuesdays because a female Warner, we don't know which one, plays bridge every Tuesday. They hear women laughing, and you hear cards shuffling upstairs. And one of his ex-wives loved to play card games, and so every Tuesday she would play bridge. And she is still playing that every Tuesday.
You can't do that in the dark.
That's why we keep the lights on for her. Exactly.
So late.
Now, as we round the corner, we're going to meet Abigail. She is a concept doll of Annabelle. So this is how we were trying to figure out what did we want Annabelle to really look like. So she is sitting here hanging out in her rocking chair. She doesn't look as scary as Annabelle. She's got her hair pulled back. She's a little bit smaller. So it kind of gives it a more like sigh of relief that she doesn't look like her true form. That's why we give her the nickname Abigail. She just asked if she moves. So for Horror Made Here, Annabelle, she, in 2016 and 2017, she was in a glass case inside of Stage 48. That's where our self-guided portion of our tour is. So in 2016, she was in a glass case with lights at the top. And security footage is caught of those lights just constantly going out. But those are the only lights that do go out in any of our setups in Stage 48. So when some of the people in the tour department needed to come in and fix the light, they opened up the case, they pulled out Annabelle, they handed it to a tour guide, they fixed the lights, put Annabelle back in her case. The tour guide had a pierce mark on her wrist. They checked Annabelle to make sure there was nothing sharp on her. There was, of course, nothing. Now, 2017, she was yet again in a glass case. We had footage of her seeing like she was getting loose in a sense. Her head kept hitting the door of the glass case, and she hit it so hard one night that she tumbled out. And custodial found her on the floor, didn't go near it, ran out, and she refused to come back inside of Stage 48 until after Horror Made Here was completed. She didn't want to come back. So they had to keep fixing it because she kept getting out of her case. So they eventually had to wire it shut, and they did that by giving it to the same tour guide. They took her out of her case, handed it to that same tour guide. They wired her cage, her cage, that should be what it is.
Cage.
Exactly. They put her back in, and this time that same tour guide had scratches on her wrist. So clearly she is not liked by one of our tour guides here at Warner Brothers.
One thing about being inside there's no reverb. It's very... reverb, and the sound doesn't travel in there.
Yeah. Exactly. So why do they hear footsteps all the time?
Yeah, that's kind of creepy.
So when they were filming Conjuring 2, there is a scene that had to do with basically a lot of water. So we had to create our own water tank right in here. So we man-made it. So 16, they have a giant water tank underneath that floor, so we made another one for Stage 4. You don't see that here anymore. We man-made it, we filmed those scenes for Conjuring 2, and sealed it back up. So when you're here at night, and you might be alone, or you might be with a friend, you may hear noises of someone beating the floor, as if we have left someone in that water. So Chuck happened before Conjuring 2. But yet that spirit tried to push him down the stairs. So before Conjuring 2 happened, we had someone come in and simply bless the stage so nothing crazy would go on. Exactly. Right. So it only seemed to anger them because stranger and more crazier things have happened since, including the water tank and the beating of the floor. You're going to hear running all along these catwalks here, but yet no one is there. And we don't know how they can get under here. Now, connecting below us, we're in Stage 4. This is connected to Stage 5 is on the other side. We have Stage 10 and we have Stage 12. Underground is tunnels.
Oh, really?
These were built, and this is, legend has it, this is where Jack Warner would go underground and run from his brothers that would be trying to get his attention, or running from Betty Davis. Lovely woman. They had their moments, but they got it together enough that they did over 50 movies together. So that is where he will run and go hide. So we don't know if maybe the spirits in those tunnels have reached underneath our floor, and that's the beating that we hear, or they are the people that are running through this catwalk. Now, that paranormal group, part of one of our security guards, Johnny, they came in here to record some EVP. They didn't hear personally anything until they walked out and they listened to the recording, and all they heard was screeching noises. There will be speakers in here that's not plugged into anything. and there will just be people screaming in those speakers, but yet there's no electrical outlets near where that speaker was at the time. Many things have happened. Nothing has happened to me in here, but who's to say that that doesn't change tonight? So.
Tonight, like right now?
Right now. As I said, these lights are motion censored, so in just a moment. And pretty sure that's why we have a cross on the side of our wall.
Where?
That's more like a plus sign.
Yeah, just pretend it's a cross. Don't anger the spirits.
I wouldn't anger them. So we have someone in our legal department is a big fan of our Conjuring universe. They came in to watch the Crooked Man scene, believe it or not. It happened just all connected. So she was watching that scene take place. We have our badges. They are pretty connected to us by a key holder. She had her sunglasses deep, deep in her pocket. She walked out of the soundstage. She went to go scan a badge to another building. Her scan card was gone. Her glasses were out of her pocket. She went to go retrace her steps. Nowhere to be found. She thinks that the spirits in stage 4 took them. She reported them lost. She reported them missing. Nothing ever turned up. Her key card was never scanned ever again because, you know, we have it all on record. Anytime I scan this, it's going to be on record. So it just vanished. One of James Wan's assistant, she had worked on Insidious. She was holding onto his iPad, and pictures from Insidious popped up on her iPad. And she said, I didn't take these. I don't know how they got there, but it was inside of here in stage 4. So they were trying to figure out how to delete them, and she pulled up the picture and to hit preview mode to try and delete them, and they just wouldn't delete until after she left the soundstage, and then those pictures were gone.
iCloud is freaky.
Why is this considered the most haunted?
This is where the most
I'm
normal
sorry.
activity has been
Like,
seen.
what caused this to be so haunted?
We're thinking it has a lot to do with those tunnels. Because the only things that are connected for these tunnels are going to be these 4 stages, because they are backing up to executive circle. Jack Warner would get very upset if he didn't hear typewriters typing when he walked past their offices. So the Epstein brothers thought it would be funny to go to the sound department, get recordings of typewriters, and put it in their offices. So anytime they heard Jack Warner's footsteps, they just had to push play. That way, they didn't get in trouble. Now, to this day, people on the 2nd floor will hear typewriters typing and the clinging of moving the paper from the left to the right and shuffling the paper next to the typewriters. We don't have typewriters anymore. We don't have that sound anymore. But yet, that is one of the most heard of noises that we've had here at Warner Brothers since the Epstein brothers existed.
Oh.
So they're still seen to this day. Now there's a security guard. I told you there's some places security will refuse to go. He was doing his outside patrol when he goes and looks up at the 2nd floor. All the lights turn on one by one, and he sees a woman in a white dress running across there. He goes up to check it. The lights are off. There's nobody there. He goes back down those stairs. He looks back up, and the lights all turn on once more, and that woman is running yet again. We think that it is our version of the woman in white. So the woman in white, she is, I feel like in America it's known as our Bloody Mary. Now for our Latin American cultures, that's going to be La Llorona. So it's basically a woman who has had a tragic life and a tragic death. So she is internally suffering in her deceased life. So our version of the Lady in White is Betty Davis. Because anytime this woman in white is seen, she has blonde hair and she has her pinup style hair. She, like I said, she did over 55 movies here. This is near where her dressing room used to be. She's seen a lot right here in our rose garden. She loved to pester Jack Warner. So this would be where she would frequent because this is where his offices were as well. Now when she passed away, she is buried at Forest Lawn. It's about a mile away from here. And she's on the hill because even in death, she wanted to look down at Warner Brothers. Clever girl. Yeah. We had a couple of tour guides. Funny enough, 2 of them are doing the tours tonight. one of which brought a friend through the jungle, and they were just walking through telling what was filmed where in our jungle. When they both froze, went cold and silent, did not talk the rest of the way until they got out of the jungle. The tour guide looked at her friend and she said, "Did you see that?" And the friend just refused to speak. Their friend refused to speak until the following day when she just persisted on asking her. And she said, "I saw that woman in white on our left." And then she disappeared in the jungle. Once again, blonde pinup girls, dropped waist, Betty Davis. In addition to that, that's where we also had some scenes of Annabelle creation. So the scene where the little girl in the wheelchair gets pushed inside of that shed, gets attacked by the scarecrow, that was done in there. They're called Arachnophobia. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be remade by James Wan himself. Yep. So, stage 12. This is where a lot of that film was done. If it wasn't done in stage 12, it was done in our jungle. Most of those spiders that you see are real in there. So we brought in a lot of spiders from different cultures from all around the world to be a part of this film. It was basically supposed to be a controlled environment. Until the film was over, they were not able to obtain all the spiders that they started with, so some started to roam free. They caught some of them in stage 12, but they were seeing a lot of spider webs in stage 12 after the film was done, and more spider webs than ever in the jungle, that the security got so scared to go inside of either one of these places that we had to hire a trained professional to capture the remaining spiders, if they actually could capture these spiders, or to extinguish them altogether. I feel like you shouldn't be laughing.
Also, that crew just seems like something just happened to them.
No, they're just being goofy. Now, when they were doing the casting for Arachnophobia, the director had Big Bob sitting on his desk. It's this giant bird-eating spider sitting in a cage on the desk. Basically, their reactions of this spider was going to let him know if they wanted to cast him. So the least scared, the better. So when Jeff Daniels was sitting there, he asked him, "Hey, does this scare you?" And he was like, "Well, normally spiders don't, but that one is pretty big." So all spiders, real. There's still a lot of spiders around here to this day that are gigantic and terrifying. So we're not going to be able to see it right now, but we do have 27 and 27A. It's going to be on our right hand side if we kept going down there. I told you that our stages ended up having to split because we don't have stage 13. So 27A, there's been no paranormal activity there, but a couple of tour guides had went in to go shut the stage down for the night when they happened to step into 27 and just started hearing banging on that side of the wall. Completely different stages, just connected by one wall. One person lingered, the other person ran because they both heard the same thing and just acted opposite. So it depends on what kind of person you are when it comes to those scary situations. Inside here, folks, is where we have filmed Gremlins, Monster Squad, Lost Boys, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Bad Seed. Wow.
Bad Seed?
So, in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, this is where they burn. So they have a witch burning right here, and that whole little dog as well. Now with our church here, this church is your opening church in Annabelle creation. So this has been utilized in that. This is where the Lost Brothers grab their holy water and the Lost Boys, or Frog Brothers grab their holy water and Lost Boys. Over to the left, this is where the vortex was in Monster Squad. Now James Dean, he did 2 of his 3 movies right here in Midwest. East of Eden is a big one that happened right here. This was Salinas, California. So when tour guides are talking about James Dean near the church, more times than not, the doors have just opened on their own, basically inviting us in and letting us know that, hey, it's okay, come inside and talk about it a little bit closer to where we filmed a lot of our scenes here. Would you all like to look at the interior of one of our houses? Yes. Let's do it.
This is also the area where Horror Made Here was, right?
Yeah, this is, yeah, if you all have been to Horror Made Here, this is where Horror Made Here was.
Hey, Okay, this
That's the
looks
Conjuring house.
familiar.
All right. So if you were here for Horror Made Here, this was your Conjuring Universe house. So this is where the nun appeared at the very end of that house. We keep it pretty neutralized here because productions can do literally anything they want to these houses. They can tear down a wall and build it right back up. Now if we make our way through here, you're going to notice there is no true second floor. This is not a real home. But at night we have these ghost lights here. Just a practical joke. But they're highly needed because more times than not you're going to hear footsteps on all of these catwalks here at night. Now for that Conjuring haunted house, if you can recall before you actually entered that home, that is where the nun peeked down and looked at you before you made your way inside of this home. Looks a little more spooky. I'll take down the your footsteps here.
Oh, I remember this one.
So we have some skeptics in our tour department that really don't believe in any of this stuff. So they decided to, you know, create their own little adventure of a ghost hunt and try and debunk everything that has been said. So a group of 4 of them. We're in the backyard here. This is the home that James Dean lived in East of Eden. So she just took her phone from one end and just kind of panned it across the backyard. And the entire time she was doing that, there was a figure that was constantly just following her on the right-hand side from the left to the right. They didn't hear anything, but when they got into their cars, the Bluetooth automatically turned on in her vehicle, and all you heard was a screeching noise. And we'll cut through here. When she tried to turn her Bluetooth off, it immediately turned right back on. When she tried to turn her phone off, her phone turned right back on. To get that noise to actually stop, she had to physically turn her car off all the way and then turn it back on and disconnect it. She's not very skeptical anymore after that. So on your right hand side, this is stage 48. So this is where Annabelle is during our Horror Made Here. Now, it doesn't matter if it's Horror Made Here or not. Throughout the year, these front doors will open and close on their own. And these doors, when they are locked, they can only be opened through key card access. So that does not explain if Annabelle is there or not, why those doors actually open and close on their own. So this will be as close as we'll ever be to Jack Warner's old offices. We're also coming up ahead to James Dean's old dressing room. So James Dean, as I mentioned before, he did 2 of his 3 films in Midwest, but he did all 3 films here at Warner Brothers. Giant East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause. He died at the early age of 24 due to an incident on the road. That is still in speculation, of course. But he was a rebellious character. You know, he was a kid. He ended up revving his engines in front of elephant doors during productions and caused them thousands of dollars because they would have to redo those scenes over and over, to where Jack Warner finally just banned motorcycles on the lot altogether. But James Dean, he was socially awkward. He did not want to leave the lot. He wanted to live here in his dressing room. His dressing room is where the light is, straight ahead of us here, attached to that building. He ended up having the director of East of Eden had his co-star in the dressing room next to him, so they would basically stay overnight here at Warner Brothers. Now that building straight ahead, that is the dressing room of James Dean, and that is where he is still seen today. So you can see him shuffling the curtains in the door, walking along the balconies, and sometimes you can even hear his motorcycle engine revving in the parking lot. Well,
thank you for taking me to my car.
Absolutely. I hope you guys learned some stuff. Hopefully I freaked you out a bit.
That was awesome.
And I hope you enjoyed that film that you watched tonight.
Yes.
And just remember that Annabelle comes home in June.
I know.
Where does Annabelle live?
Annabelle's in the Relic Room. What are you talking about? She is based off of a
Real
Raggedy
doll.
Ann. Real Raggedy Ann doll.
We'll talk about it later.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank
Who
you.
parked
We had
here?
fun.
Who parked here? All right. So we'll have you all hop out here. Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you. Well, that's going to conclude our ghost tour that we got. Now, this is not a regular tour they offer here. This was just for the press junket for the Curse of La Llorona. But what a really cool way to get some little spooky history here on the Warner Brothers backlot here in Hollywood, USA.